ever wondered what it would be like to buy new construction in Denver, Colorado? Well, today this video is going to give you a quick outline of different new constructions and the things that you're going to want to think about before jumping into a new construction home, because it's harder than you think. I'm Kayla Schmidt, the Aspen Collection, your Colorado real estate expert. Make sure you subscribe or reach out to me with any real estate questions you may have after my videos. Okay, so here's the nuts and bolts of new construction. And please know that I definitely know my stuff when it comes to new construction, because not only is my mom an interior designer, but my dad and my husband are contractors. So although they're on the commercial side, it's giving me some really important insights that you need to think about when getting new construction or even thinking about buying new construction. So first and foremost, there's a few different kinds of new construction. There's spec builders, which are smaller, locally owned, smaller builders, like usually in the Berkeley, Highlands, Tennyson, Sloan's Lake neighborhood. They don't do mass productions. They usually do 10 to 15, sometimes 30 homes a year, but they're actually called spec builders. And so those are the builders that I think it's really important to worry about, because they're the ones that usually don't have insurance. They don't have all of the subgroups that are heavily insured. And there can be some pros and cons with getting into them, because you want to make sure that you always have somebody that has a warranty or blue tape walk through company after, to make sure that their work is covered. And most people actually don't know either that most new construction home builders have to have a 7-year structural warranty as well as a 1-year bumper to bumper warranty. So some things to think about when you're doing spec builders in smaller communities. And then number 2 is you have the big massive builders like Lennar, Century 21, Richmond, Toll Brothers. I mean, there's some massive builders. And those are the builders that are actually usually further in the suburbs. They're doing large mass developments. And those are the ones that oftentimes you have to think big picture with them, because they're all about inventory and they're all about getting rid of their inventory. So sometimes I find that you can really negotiate on that kind of product unless they're selling out super fast or, in a really desirable neighborhood. So there's a few things to think about when going with spec, and there's a few things to think about when you're going with like the mass builders that have large production. Okay, number 2, and one of the things that you have to think about when you're walking a new construction home. So with the spec builders, you're walking the property, you're looking and you're wondering if there's any options or things to change. Typically, spec builders are turnkey. So you move in, you buy it as is. Sometimes you can have them upgrade things like countertops or tile backsplash, but most of the time what you see is what you get. And they don't have a lot of product or inventory. With the big tract home builders, Lennar, Richmond, all of those builders, you really have to be careful, because a lot of times they'll have their model homes, which by the way are usually amazing, but oftentimes they can be full of $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 upgrades. And when you actually go to buy the same exact home, you get nowhere near all of the upgrades. Sometimes even worse, you don't even get lights in the ceiling. So when you go to buy a new construction home with those mass builders, it's really important to have an agent on site with you so you can ask what's actually included in the purchase price and then what they're going to charge you for later. And one of the guys that I really get worried about is Richmond, because they always charge you for lot premiums. They charge you for lighting. They can charge you for upgrading floors, tiles, you name it, they'll charge you. And they're transparent about it, right? But you want to make sure that you have someone to negotiate with you or to help you on your behalf of negotiating those things, because they can be included. You just have to know when to ask for it. Okay, number 3 is timeline. So as I said with the small builders, the spec builders, they're usually turnkey, move-in ready. What you didn't know, and I didn't tell you earlier, is a lot of times you can negotiate on those guys too, because they don't have as much carrying costs, or they have smaller buckets for carrying costs. So if their homes are sitting on the market, it typically hurts them more because they don't have the backlog that a Lennar like big builder has. They really need to get rid of that project to move on to the next one. They don't have as much money in the bank. So I would say if you see a spec builder with property that's sitting for a while, I would definitely try to negotiate them down, which I shouldn't be saying this because they represent builders, but a little tip and trick that if you have a good agent, they can help you with. Something to think about for the big tract home builders. This is kind of a tricky one. So what a lot of people don't tell you about tract home builders is all of the metro districts. So what is a metro district? It's actually an additional tax that they put on the homeowner, you, when you buy the property, and they call it your taxes, right? But not only do you have your taxes, you have a metro district tax. and sometimes they can be upwards of 1, 2, 3. I've seen it as high as 6%. And so the homeowners are paying for all of the infrastructure of the roads, which can be super costly. So if you compare a spec new build where taxes are around $5,000 a month, when you get a new construction guy in a metro district, you're looking at like $16,000 a month sometimes for taxes. That covers the metro districts, and that's a $10,000 difference a year. So something to think about between the two builders and what you can afford. You can also get incentives. Most spec builders don't have a lender incentive program, but a lot of the large spec builders, the large mass builders do. So a lot of things to think about and why it's so important to have an agent. Okay, we're just about to wrap up my new construction tips and tricks. And the only thing that I want to make sure to advise you, always, always, always get an inspection on a new construction home. So many times I have clients that buy a house without an agent for new construction because they say you don't need one. But I can tell you time and time again, when your inspector comes in and inspects that house, I've seen them find the craziest thing. I've seen sewer lines not attached. I've seen studs not correctly into the drywall. I've seen major problems with floors and structural issues. I mean, you name it, you've seen it. I've seen it in new construction. So make sure you get an inspection. I know it's a couple $100, but it's really worth making sure that somebody test drives the home before you move in and find the problem. But the great thing about new construction is typically there's a 1-year warranty and most builders will fix it. But I would say get an inspection so you know where you're starting. All right, if you're thinking about buying new construction, I have had a lot of tips and tricks here, but make sure you use an agent, make sure you get an inspection, and if you're ever looking for a local realtor, I'm Kayla Schmidt, the Aspen Collection. I would love to help you buy your first new construction home.